The sea was calm, too calm. Beneath those silent blue waves, something alive was waiting, cold, metallic, and merciless. At exactly 6:42 a.m., a sailor aboard the USS Indianapolis shouted, "Torpedo wake!" Portside, but it was already too late. Within seconds, the ocean exploded with fire, steel, and screams. Japanese torpedoes had found their mark, turning one of America's proudest warships into a floating coffin. This is the story of how Japan's deadly underwater hunters, armed with the most advanced torpedoes of World War II, ripped through the American fleet and changed the course of naval warfare forever. In the early 1940s, the Pacific wasn't just a battlefield, it was a graveyard waiting to be filled. Japan's Imperial Navy knew they couldn't outgun the Americans forever. But what they lacked in numbers, they compensated for with something far more terrifying: superior underwater weaponry. Their secret was the Type 93 Long Lance torpedo, a weapon that stunned even the Allies. It could travel over 40 kilometers, twice the range of any Allied torpedo, and carry a warhead powerful enough to split a cruiser in half. Powered by pure oxygen instead of compressed air, it left no visible wake, making it a ghostly killer beneath the waves. In a hidden submarine base on Hashirajima Island, Japanese crews prepared their silent assassins. Men worked in the shadows, polishing brass casings and adjusting the delicate mechanisms that would guide these weapons of death. They treated each torpedo as if it was sacred, a blade of honor forged for the emperor. Across the ocean, the American Navy steamed confidently toward the Philippines and Midway, unaware that death was already stalking them. On December 10, 1941, just 3 days after Pearl Harbor, Japanese submarines unleashed their first coordinated torpedo attacks on American ships. The USS Lexington, the USS Houston, and many others came under sudden, unseen assault. Sailors reported hearing a faint hiss beneath the waves just before the impact. Then, the sea itself erupted into a tower of flame. But the true horror of Japan's torpedo mastery would appear in the Battle of the Java Sea in 1942. The Allied fleet, British, Dutch, Australian, and American, believed they could overpower Japan's forces through sheer numbers and coordination. They were wrong. As darkness fell over the Pacific, Japanese destroyers unleashed a deadly spread of Type 93 torpedoes into the Black Water. There were no radar warnings, no smoke trails, no chance to react. At 10:17 p.m., the Dutch cruiser HNLMS de Ruyter took a direct hit. The explosion ripped her apart, flames consuming her decks as sailors leapt into the sea. Minutes later, the HNLMS Java met the same fate. Hundreds of men vanished beneath the waves before help could even reach them. When dawn broke, the Allied fleet was in ruins. Japan's torpedoes had done what even their aircraft couldn't: cripple an entire fleet in one night. Back in Washington, U.S. military analysts were stunned. How were the Japanese torpedoes so deadly, so precise, so invisible? The answers came slowly through survivor accounts and pieces of wreckage recovered from the sea. They discovered that Japan had developed an oxygen-based propulsion system, something so dangerous that no other navy had dared to attempt it. One mistake during loading could cause the torpedo to explode inside its own ship. Yet the Japanese engineers had perfected it. The risk had paid off. The Long Lance torpedo became a weapon of legend, and a nightmare for Allied sailors. Under the dark ocean, Japanese submarines continued their silent hunt. One of the most feared was the I-19, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Takakazu Kanashi. On September 15, 1942, I-19 spotted the American aircraft carrier USS Wasp near Guadalcanal. Kanashi ordered 6 torpedoes fired. They sped through the ocean like invisible knives. Minutes later, 3 massive explosions shook the sea. The Wasp was engulfed in flames. Over 200 men were killed instantly. But the destruction didn't stop there. 2 more of those torpedoes continued on their deadly path, slamming into the destroyer USS O'Brien and the battleship USS North Carolina, damaging both. In a single attack, one submarine had struck 3 major U.S. warships. No other navy had ever achieved such a feat. Survivors of these attacks told stories that would haunt them forever. Sailors floating among burning oil, their shipmates screaming for help as the sea itself burned. Some swam for hours, others simply disappeared into the deep. Those torpedoes came out of nowhere, one survivor said. You couldn't see them, couldn't stop them. 1 second you were standing on steel, the next, you were in the water. Beneath the waves, under the dark curtain of night, the Japanese submarines waited in utter silence. Inside the metal hull, only the sound of breathing and soft mechanical clicks filled the air. The commander stood with a cold expression. He knew that the next few moments could alter history forever. "Target locked, torpedo ready," whispered the operator, his hands trembling slightly. In front of them, the massive silhouette of the American fleet shimmered against the moonlit sea. The destroyers and carriers moved majestically, their lights glowing like floating cities in the darkness. But the Japanese knew, this peaceful image was about to be shattered into chaos. Fire 1. A hiss sliced through the water as the first torpedo sped out of its tube, cutting a deadly path through the deep. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then, an explosion so powerful that even the submarine's hull vibrated. Above the surface, the USS Wasp was struck midsection. A huge column of fire erupted, followed by screams and confusion. Sailors were thrown to the deck. Alarms blared as the ship tilted slightly to one side. "Mayday, we've been hit, we've been hit," came the desperate cry over the radio. "Engine room's on fire, we're losing power." But before anyone could comprehend what had happened, another torpedo found its mark. This time, the USS O'Brien. The impact tore through the steel plates like paper. A thunderous roar filled the air, and the ocean itself seemed to rise in fury. Men were scrambling, some jumping into the water, others trying to put out flames spreading across the deck. The night sky glowed orange from the fire. Pieces of burning metal rained into the sea. Meanwhile, deep below, the Japanese commander watched the sonar quietly. 2 confirmed hits. His crew erupted in silent, controlled celebration, but he raised his hand. "Stay silent," he ordered. "The hunt isn't over yet." He knew that if they surfaced, even for a moment, the American destroyers would rain death upon them. So the submarines stayed submerged, moving like shadows in the dark. Up above, chaos ruled. The Wasp's captain shouted commands through the smoke. "Seal the bulkheads. Get those pumps running." But the fires were spreading too fast. Ammunition stores caught flames, causing smaller explosions that rocked the ship again and again. The smell of burning oil filled the air. Men coughed and screamed as they tried to carry the wounded to lifeboats. In the flickering firelight, faces were smeared with blood and soot. The once mighty ship was now a floating inferno. The sea around them was full of survivors, floating debris, lifeboats, and men shouting for help. Yet even as they struggled, no one noticed that under them, the sea still hid death. The Japanese subs had not left. From afar, smoke rose like a black tower against the morning sky, a silent testament to the power of unseen weapons, and the horror that lurked beneath calm waters. And far away, deep in the Pacific, the Japanese submarines sailed home in silence. They had struck hard and vanished like ghosts. But even in their success, none of them smiled. For each of them knew, what they had unleashed that night would only bring more destruction, more death, and a war that would consume them all. That night became one of the deadliest underwater ambushes of World War II, the night when Japanese torpedoes tore through American pride, and the ocean itself became a graveyard of steel. Subscribe my channel and full video watch thankfully.